Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another fantastic episode on the Unleashing Potentials podcast. I'm your host, Bernadette. Joining me today is Shell Sawyer. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you
How are
for
you
coming
doing
in.
today?
Oh, I'm great. I love Mondays, most Mondays at least.
They can be
Yeah, I
busy,
love
right?
Mondays. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it
they're
kind of
usually the
gets
busiest
you
days,
back
so
into
they go
routine.
fast.
Yeah, it gets you
Yeah.
back into routine, which is nice.
Yeah. And you're in Edmonton area?
I'm in
Is that
Calgary.
Calgary? Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How's the weather there?
It's okay. We had some snow. It's not gonna stay, I don't think, but the
Okay.
sun is
Oh,
warm.
that's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
How about you?
good. Good. I'm in Connecticut in the New England area of the United States.
Ooh,
And today's kind of like on a rainy day, but it's starting to get warm, and I think spring is around the corner. So,
yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah, I'm
That's
looking forward
awesome.
to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
awesome.
a little
Yeah,
gray right now, but I know we're going to have some, bright, buds budding, and I love the four seasons. So,
that's awesome.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
So can you tell us who are you and what do you do there?
Okay. So my name is Shel Sawyer. My background has always been in finance. Since I was younger, my dad was wonderful and taught me all about his finances, and I used to sit with him and do financials, when he wrote checks and he had like all different colored pens and everything like that. That was back in the day, right? But when I finally went to school, I went to college for accounting, and I worked over 20 years in the financial services industry. And then I went through a divorce, and I felt like I wanted someone to help me through this divorce financially, to help me make good decisions. There's a lot of legal experts out there, and there's a lot of mediators, but how does anybody know how to make good financial decisions? So I had such a hard time going through my divorce. My brain was foggy. I was like not in a good shape. Most days I didn't even want to get out of bed, let alone make decisions for myself and my daughter. So now here I was doing that, and I was like, I wish there was somebody by my side. So after the fog kind of cleared, I became a certified divorce financial analyst, and I help people make good decisions in their divorce, make sure they're looking at their finances. And I'm also a mediator and a financial recovery coach. So I've turned that financial expertise into helping people get through divorce in the best way possible and heal from that, right? There's a big part of this that, what I loved about your podcast, the healing together. um, I just thought this was like the perfect conversation, and I'm so glad that you had me on.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, we can't heal by ourselves. Sometimes, m most of the time, actually, not sometimes. We assume or think that we're the only one who's going through what we're going through, and
Mm,
therefore no one sees us, nobody understands that we're gonna stay
right.
stuck in the situation that we're in, which is not true at all. So I'm so happy that you're using your story and passion to transform and help other people heal because it is so hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel when we're in the
Yes.
storm, when we're grieving, when we're in pain.
Right.
Um,
Oh, I love that you
yeah,
said grieving, because that's
yeah,
exactly what you're going through, right? Like
yeah.
when you're in pain, it's hard to see. I love that you said too that you feel so alone, because I did write a book. I'm just like, but you are not alone.
Oh,
That's my
nice.
book about when divorce is on your doorstep, because yes, that's how I felt too. Like I was so alone, but I wanted people to know that there's others that are out there willing to help them and help them heal.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
In a
So how
difficult
did you
time.
heal? Can you walk us through, give us a little glimpse of the mess and then the cleanup?
Yeah. So it was literally devastating to me. I was, in shock. now looking back on it, right, I kind of look at it as it was probably a gift to me, right? Because I wouldn't have been able to do the things that I'm doing now. Being on your podcast, right? Probably never would have done that in my when I was married and everything I thought was fine, right? It does take time, but it's not just about time, right? Healing your wounds, because it can, right? The more time you spend, but it's about how you spend your time, right? And what you're doing to overcome. So yes, I was devastated at first. But once, like I said, that fog kind of cleared, I was like, I have to get myself better because there's no one else that's going to do that, right? There's people that can help. And so I started doing things that I wanted to do. I became a certified divorce coach. That was the first thing I did. It was healing to be with other people that had experienced the same thing that I had experienced. I started going to the gym and meeting new people. I started like picking up hobbies that I hadn't done before. I was reading, spending time with myself, and giving myself self-care. So important, right? As women, I feel like we don't do that enough. We are taking care of everyone else first and not ourselves. But just like when you're in an airplane and you need to give yourself the oxygen first, right? If something happens, you need to give yourself self-care and self-love, in order to move forward. I felt like that helped me so much. Um, yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you
That's,
for sharing.
yeah,
That's
Teresa.
amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. As women, we just we come last, especially those of us who are mothers. We just come
Yes.
last. Everybody else is first. And it's
Right.
so easy to love other people.
Hmm.
But when it's reversed to us loving ourselves, that's very hard.
That's tough. We are so tough on ourselves too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We're so much kinder to everyone else and not to ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in your opinion, how do you think divorces impact kids? Once you answer, I'll let you know what happened with my parents.
Okay. Okay. All kids are going to be a little bit different, right? I had a daughter who went through this with me, right? I'll say she went through this with me. I'm not going to say that it changed her life. It definitely did, right? But I think because I was a strong parent for her, I didn't, I was always like very open with her, but didn't let her in on those adult conversations, right? But just kept a very open communication between her and I and what was going on. And obviously, I included my ex-husband as well. We were very good co-parents. And I think that's what's really important for kids is being good co-parents. They see that your parents still respect one another and still are kind. I feel like what kids react to is when that's not happening, right? When there's confrontation and you're getting let in on these non-adult conversations, and kids are used as like a go-between, can be really damaging,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, just looking out for their best interests and what would be best for them. She actually went to therapy for a little while too, and I think that helped her, in the long run to be able to talk to somebody about what was going on
Yeah.
with her parents and this
Hmm.
new life because she's entering a new life too, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it was hard.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what
But I think
happened to
she's
me.
thrived.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
happened to you?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I was like a soccer ball being bounced in between,
Oh,
and it's so
yeah.
damaging. And
It is.
up to this day, now that I'm an adult, I I will fight many bears to not be what my parent taught me, to not do what they
Mm.
did. Mostly my dad, very abusive and aggressive
I'm sorry.
and yeah. By the time I got therapy, it was too late in my adulthood, mental health and anger
Mm.
and not understanding what is going on. What is happening? No one explained that. There was just a lot of bitterness, and I carry
Mm,
that. And I know I'm not alone. There are many, many other kids who are now adults. They're trying to figure out what is marriage. I don't want to get married.
yeah.
I was joking. I said, um, if I do get married, it's gonna be at a graveyard, black dresses, and I'll still
Oh,
celebrate. That's just like a
yeah,
gothic kind of wedding to
yeah, yeah.
put to rest all the baggage my parents put on me, all of it.
Mm, yeah, almost like a celebration of putting that behind you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I'm so glad you brought that up and shared that because that, you know, that's what can be damaging to kids, right?
Hmm.
Is that, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
Hmm.
The best thing for the children is to, be, even if it's just one strong parent, right? Having somebody to be able to talk to might have changed you a little bit, right?
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
changed your experience at least.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Let's talk about money. People kill for
Okay.
money.
They
What?
do, don't they? Yeah,
So what
that could be a
happened?
whole conversation right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
happens when your lover wants to sue, kill, and destroy everything? Or take your
right.
money if there's joint accounts.
Yeah. That can happen, right?
Yep.
Finances, yeah. And the thing about that is normally in divorce, that's really not how it works, right?
Oh, good.
Yeah, I would say that's normally how it works. There's a lot, like I would say too, if you feel like you're being abused financially, you should get the help of the legal system. That's what it's there for, right? Don't try to go it alone. A lot of people do talk about though that it's the unfortunately I think our legal system is a little broken when it comes to the financial and marital division of property and the family law, right? It's almost like we have this criminal justice system that's trying to do family law and abide by these laws, right? And it is broken. It's not about like who did what at that point in time. I think a lot of people, a lot of judges, maybe a lot of lawyers, I'm probably speaking for them, but it's hard to hear that day in and day out, right? They're trying to just help you make good decisions and kind of move you forward. And it might not be a good decision for you, right?
Mhm, mhm.
And that's where someone like myself comes in, is helping you with that. Kind of, I like to say that I like to block out all the noise that's happening and let's focus on what's good for you and your family and look at the financials and make sure you are making good decisions for yourself and that you advocate specifically for that, right? Having a plan is so important.
Yeah.
And kind of blocking out that noise. Some people telling you, I hear this a lot is like somebody will say, I'm going to ruin you financially, or you're not going to get anything out of this. Don't let that happen, right? Advocate for yourself and have somebody like an attorney advocate for you, but understand what those priorities are. It might not be, making that other person look bad. It might just be making yourself look good and holding your composure and doing the right things for yourself, right? Which is hard for people to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. As you were talking, I just got the visual of, other family members being involved in the marriage, friends being
Uh,
involved in the marriage. At times, it depends on the circumstances or situation. People going through those very horrific, gut-wrenching times, they
mhm.
can be ganged up on, meaning they feel alone. There's like a pack here and then just that person there.
Right.
It's I can only imagine how
Their support is kind of
mentally
broken down, right?
exhausting it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that's like that can happen, right? It's almost like, I don't know. I feel like it goes back to even like dating, right? When you're dating and like you break up in high school and your friends have to now take sides, right?
Mhm.
That's why it's good to have a professional by your side that can be your support person, right? If you feel that you're alone because of what's happening in your surroundings, get somebody by your side that can help you through this, right? And can help you navigate those troubled waters, especially turbulent ones, right? It would be like being out to sea and you're all alone and you're like, how do I get back? These are troubled waters. How do I get back to shore?
Mhm.
Having a lifeguard by your side, right, is how you're going to get back to shore. And that's what we kind of look. We are like a lifeguard when it comes to divorce, unfortunately,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah.
So, can you tell us, for those who don't understand or haven't heard that word, mediator? I've heard it. I've been to
Yeah.
court. I've heard it. There's different um, aspects of using it. How do you
hmm
use it and help people?
So a mediator is actually a third party neutral that helps you navigate divorce, right? Mediation is an amicable process. So if you are both looking out for your own best interest, this is a good way to navigate through the divorce process, not having to go through court, not having a judge or attorneys to make decisions for you. You get to make them yourself. You're empowering yourself. And I feel that the mediation process itself is very beneficial to the children that are involved because they are not brought into the process. And you're setting yourself up to be better co-parents because you're making these decisions together. And you also have a better chance of complying with these decisions because you made them. So you know what's in here. You've had these crucial conversations, right? So if you're not in a point where you want to be confrontational, because I feel like that's that litigation process is, your attorneys are gonna kind of argue together to get
Yeah.
a negotiation settlement, right? Kind of not setting you up for success because if you're starting that process being very confrontational, how are you going to co-parent in the end, right? That's going to be really hard. So this mediation process is established to help people be amicable, make good decisions, keep it calm. Um, and so it's an alternative to the other ways of divorcing.
Yeah.
So if you can keep it amicable, it is lower cost too. A lot lower cost. I would say the average, if you're looking at litigation, the average cost of divorce has close to about $15,000 per person, in the United States at least, right? So
Oh
those are
my
US
gosh.
dollars.
You
Yeah, it's a lot.
could buy some groceries and houses. That's
Well, yeah, and you're
expensive.
using your hard-earned money, right, to be, kind of arguing with one another, right? You probably spent less money on your wedding, and now you're spending more money on getting divorced,
Oh my
unfortunately.
goodness. Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and mediation can be like a quarter of that cost in the end. So it is beneficial, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of good about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say the one negative aspect I could find about mediation is because that mediator is a third party neutral, you're advocating for yourself in there, right?
Yeah.
So, um, one of my services that I offer is a personal divorce guide, and I help people if they're doing mediation, kind of, if they didn't use me as their mediator and they have someone else doing their mediation, helping them through that, helping them figure out what is a good negotiation strategy for this? How do you do that? Right? Because I do have experience in that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was
Mhm.
watching Judge Judy.
Yes,
I
I
was
love
watching it
her.
with one of my eyes closed, like I'm just listening to it. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
probably
You're
do anything.
working or doing something else, and you're like, who's this lady on TV? Judge
Yeah.
Judy.
I do
Yeah,
everything I can to avoid being in front of a judge like her. She's just she goes
she's
for it.
tough. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
tough, right?
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to hear
Oh yeah.
any bad mouthing of anybody. She just puts you in your place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I would
Shell,
try to stay away from her too.
oh, me too. Yeah. Yeah. So Shell, tell me more about your organization, Finding Strength with Shell LLC. When did you start
Yes.
it and what do you do with it?
Okay, so that's my business name, right? I I would say I started it because that's what I wanted people to find was their strength, right? When they felt like they didn't have any more strength. So trying to help them get through that, right? I started in 2019 as a divorce coach. I kind of thought I was going to do that on the side, and then I found a certified divorce financial analyst, and that's my forte was finances, right? So I was like, I could really do this as a business and help other people going through divorce in the best possible way and recover financially. So I also have a service called Financial Recovery Coach, and I help women mostly, right?
Mhm.
Especially if their husbands have handled the finances, their whole marriage, help them recover financially after divorce. What do they do? How do they budget? How do they save for their future? How do they make the best decisions so that they can move into the future successfully and be financially independent? So that's what I do as Finding Strength with Shell is give people strength to move forward as much as possible. I would have probably had a smaller name if I had known back then that, your domain name, you had to keep repeating it.
No, I love
Or
it.
if
And
somebody
I
had to
think
send
it
you an
works.
email.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
No,
you.
I think it
Thank you.
works because yeah, I love the word finding and then strength. We need both of those to carry on, not only in the
Yeah.
work that you do, but in everyday life in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And healing, right? You need to find that strength to heal yourself from, no matter what if it's death, if it's divorce,
Mhm.
um, you need strength to get through all that, right?
Yeah.
And finances. Yeah,
Absolutely.
we all
Yeah.
need that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. So
yeah,
can you tell me more about your book? Do you only have one book or more?
yeah. I have one book right now. You Are Not Alone. Um, I wrote it from a place of compassion. I wanted to differentiate myself from all the other books that are out there on divorce. There's a lot that offer practicality, right? How do you get through it? But I also wanted to throw in my compassionate side because I do care about your outcomes, and that's what I wanted people to get through. So I wanted this to be a companion while you're contemplating divorce, right? Or you're faced with it. How do you get through this? There's even a chapter on, healing from your pain and finding purpose in it. There's a chapter on like facing your fears. There's a lot of people, I'll say that I was finding when in the course of my business that contemplate divorce for a long period of time. It's usually not something people just jump into,
Yeah.
right? They're contemplating sometimes for years. I actually had I interviewed a lot of my friends and colleagues for this book and asked them different questions so that I could share their guidance, how they went through this trying time. And I had found that one of my interviewees had contemplated for 10 years
Oh, wow.
divorce, right? Like that's a long time. And she knew there was other things going on, right, in her marriage that she wasn't um okay with,
Yeah.
right? But it took her a long time to be able to take that next step forward.
Mhm.
And a lot of time that's fear, right? That drives that is the fear. of what is my next chapter going to look like? Am I going to be able to find someone else to love?
Hmm.
There's a lot of fear that kind of help hold you back. So I wanted this to be a companion for people who are thinking about this, and I included like reflective questions so that they could, while they're contemplating, like what are the things that they're scared about? What are the things that is kind of holding them back? Or is this really the right path that you want to take? Right? Because it could be that maybe there's something that you need to do in your marriage to help keep it, you know,
Yeah.
a new hope, right? Bring a new
Y-
hope to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
maybe heal both of you
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've met many people. Some say I've been married for 20 years, 40
Mm-hmm.
years,
Yeah.
and then
Mm-hmm.
some say 60 years. I'm like, do you mean 60 minutes or 60 years? How do you survive? And it appears to
Mm,
me, and the people that are from a different generation, they
yeah.
actually fix stuff. But this
They fix
generation,
stuff.
as
Yeah.
soon as something is not working in their favor,
Right.
they deem it to be broken and toss it.
Yeah.
But I think it's
Yeah.
in the brokenness that we can mend ourselves together.
Sure. Yeah. I think there's also a lot of other things I see in my practice, right?
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of manipulation and abuse that happens.
Mm.
So it does allow you now, um, different than I know my parents, right? My parents' generation, different than that. It allows you the ability to get out of something that's not okay for you, right? That is abusive or manipulative. Um, it does allow you to do that, right? So there's kind of I see a lot of it, right? I would say people don't necessarily throw things away that,
Yeah.
but if that other person is not working to make you happy, you have the ability to walk away from it, which is a wonderful thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Especially if there's abuse involved.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. You're
yeah,
right. Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
What
It's kind
it's
of like a different, I think I have a different view of it now that I'm in this space, is
yeah.
that I thank God every day that people can get out, right? Do some people throw it away? Definitely, right? If
Yeah.
it's broke, you throw it away now, right? That's our new generation is like, you don't fix things like you used to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think like I look back on my parents
Mm,
and yeah, they did fix things and they did have a good retirement. They were married for over 50 years and
mm,
I'm glad they stayed together. But there was some like I look at their life together and I think that there was some things that were just,
mhm,
I feel bad for my dad some days, right? Like looking back at that. And then he stayed in this marriage,
mm.
right? And he did like they did make it work. But tough.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. It's such
Yeah.
a complex topic and situation.
It is.
Even if you go
It is.
left or right, you're gonna want to go right and left. It's going
Yeah.
back and forth
Yeah.
because there
Should I
isn't
stay?
always a
Should I
right
go?
or
Like,
wrong. Yeah.
right. Yeah. I
Hmm.
think there was a song, I'm going to be dating myself here, but there's a song by I think it's the Kinks that should I stay or should I go? And that's exactly what you're doing here, right? Is you're
Yeah.
back and forth. It's almost like a ping pong.
Mhm.
Um, yeah,
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 that's tough.
very difficult.
Hmm.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
make that decision.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes that, like I said, it could be yours that you're like contemplating this. And some days you might think, hey, it's okay. And other days you might be like, I can't do this anymore, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
very difficult.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what messages of hope that you have for women or even men who might be watching this, that are
Yeah.
thinking that I can't, I'm suffocating. What is the first step and how can they process something so big?
Yeah. So I would say before anybody steps into divorce, right, they plan accordingly. It's not doing something against your spouse if you're planning, right? Um, get your finances in order. Start with that. That's usually how divorce starts is it's a negotiation of your finances. I would say 80% of what you're doing here is kind of uncoupling, right? So you have to know your finances before you even step into that divorce arena. Get your finances in order. And if you, like a lot of people, don't know your finances, and that's not judgmental because that does happen. And that's why I do what I do with compassion and no judgment is help you get your financial house in order. Um, Even if you're just contemplating and you think this might not happen for years, it's never too late to know what your finances look like. Start there, understand them, understand what a good decision for you would look like. Divorce, what happens is it's an agreement that's on paper, right? But on paper, it might look like a good agreement for you, but you have to understand the short and long-term implications of those decisions that you've made
Yeah.
and know how they're going to affect you in your future from 1 to 5 to 10 years out. What is this decision going to look like for me? Am I going to be okay?
Hmm.
Make sure you understand that before you enter the divorce arena. We plan for years to have a wedding, right?
Hmm.
More people need to plan for their divorce as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
don't just jump into it and hire the first attorney.
Hmm.
That's not a good way to go about divorce.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's very similar to planning a will.
Yes. And that's one of the things that I talk about when people are getting divorced
Yeah.
is either doing a will, making sure you update your beneficiaries because those trump your will. So understanding that, but also estate planning, right? If you did one prior to your marriage, prior to your divorce, I should say,
Hmm.
you're going to need to update that, right? Because one of the things you don't want to happen is for everything to still go to your ex, right? You need to update that will, and your beneficiaries are so important to
Yeah.
make sure you're putting the right people in place there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. So
Mhm.
earlier in the episode, you mentioned that the system is broken. How is your company and your story is mending the system and also advocating for change?
Wow, what a great question. Keeping people out of the legal system, the courtroom is one way to make sure that it's not broken, right? There's still place for attorneys in any of the process, and you need them by your side to help review, give you legal advice. Um, but the mediation process is a way to stay out of that courtroom, right? And have other people make decisions for you that might not be in the best interest of you and your family. So that's what I'm trying to advocate for is making sure you're making the right decisions for you and your family and not letting somebody else do that for you.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's the best way to use that, the legal system is there, especially for people who are being abused or manipulated or taken advantage of, and use it for what it's there for. But if you don't mean all that aspect and to um, be confrontational with your spouse, look at different avenues
Yeah.
that you can do that and set yourself up for success. That's
Hmm.
what I want to see more people do.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you were talking, something came in mind. In your book, or have you thought of doing some type of journaling where people can write down what they're feeling? I don't like to journal. I have a very hard time to do it. But when there's
Yeah.
authors who put in the thought of how I can process what I just digest the information in the book.
Yeah,
Is that something you've done or thinking about?
I have done that. I actually have, there's a QR code at the end of my book, and it has access to, I could even show you my
Yeah,
QR code.
yeah.
It has access to checklists, templates, and the ability to journal and write down anything that you're thinking as you're going through my book. And if you want to, look at the reflective questions, I'm not a big journaler either.
Mhm.
Um, but I would say one of the things that I find, I'm a big like note taker, right?
Yeah,
So even if it's just
me too.
that,
Yeah.
able to take notes,
Mm.
like when you're in a class, it can be something like that, right? And you can look back at what you wrote and
Mm.
be like, yeah, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, right? Or, you know what? I remember when I was reading Shell's book that there was something that I wanted to reflect on. Let me see what I wrote. I think that can be important, right? Especially when you're going through this process, because your brain can be very foggy, right?
Yeah.
As I get older, I find my brain can be a little foggy too. So yeah, but during the
Yeah,
process, it definitely can. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, my brain is very foggy too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, right? When I was pregnant and after I had my daughter, I think it was called a mom brain, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Shell,
that
what do
can
you want
really
people
impact
to
you.
get out of this episode?
I want people to advocate for themselves and to really understand their finances. It's a really important part of divorce. And if you need help, I am willing to help you, even if it's just to have a conversation and get you started down the right path.
Yeah. Oh, I've been meaning to ask this question. I better ask it before we wrap up. Um, would you say that the divorce rate went up during the pandemic?
Um, yes, it did a little bit, depending on where you are. The pandemic really did have it really hit people's relationships hard, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All
Yeah.
of a sudden you were spending a lot of time with somebody and you're like, hmm,
Mhm.
maybe
Yeah.
this isn't good, right? And yeah, and there's such a thing as gray divorces now too, and it's for people who are over 50 getting
Oh,
divorced. Yeah,
I've
there's
never
it's
heard
a
of
big,
that.
yeah. And it's kind of like, and the reason why I bring it up is it's kind of like the same thing. It's like once you're like the kids are out of the house and you're thinking about retiring, do I want to spend the rest of my life with this person, right? Is this the life that I want to live? So I think that's what happened during the pandemic too, right? Is
Mhm.
this who I want to spend the rest of my life with?
Yeah,
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 unfortunately.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the marriage vows till death do us apart. How about till
I
life
know.
test us and break and bring us back together again? I don't know.
Yeah,
It's I have an issue with the vow. Um, but if
yeah,
that's what people want to do, great, fantastic. Have fun.
I know.
Yeah.
And I think some people don't think about their consequences too, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah.
and what's happening to that other person when you're leaving them,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
Leaving them devastated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I have two
yeah.
questions for you as we wrap up. The first one is,
Okay.
what is the meaning of life for you?
Wow. The meaning of life is to have compassion for other people.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
love that.
I think more of us need to have that kindness for others. We've lost our way that way.
hmm
And I want to bring that back.
Absolutely. I love that. My last
Yeah.
question for you, where can people buy your book, support your work,
Oh,
and maybe partner with you, right?
yeah. So Finding Strength with Shell is my website, www. Oh, that's a lot to say. Well, findingstrengthwithshell.com. My book's also available on Amazon. So, but you can also go to my website to get it as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Well,
Thank you.
Shell,
That was
yeah.
an easier question than the meaning of life, by the way.
That one's hard.
You're tough. Yeah, that one's hard. Yeah.
It is, yeah, yeah. Well, Shell, thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time. What a refreshing conversation this was. A lot of healing, inspiration,
Mm.
and hope for those who are watching. So thank you for all you do and for showing up today, not only for me, but for my audience and for yourself. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I love this conversation. I appreciate you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. All right.